Distant sirens, rain hammering against the asphalt, and the faint smell of bleach leaking from the alley like a badly kept secret. I moved forward with my gun lowered, heart pounding too loud. She ran, stumbled under the glow of a flickering streetlight, and the backpack burst open on the ground. A soaked notebook, a wallet, a ring of keys, and a pistol spun across the pavement until it stopped at my boot. A Glock 19. The world shrank. A grip wrapped with red tape. A cracked rear sight. Exactly. Like in the photos from the closed case, the weapon that tore my brother out of my life one autumn night. I never forgave. My stomach flipped. The past barged in uninvited. My hands shook before tightening the barrel into the void between us. She raised her hands, breathing in short gasps, her eyes asking not for forgiveness, but for time. "Don't shoot," she whispered. "That gun, it wasn't mine that killed him." Her voice cracked, but the blade of her words cut deep. "Your brother gave it to me." The rain stopped. The alley held its breath, and I, stuck in the middle, couldn't tell if I was about to arrest her or whatever was left of myself. I grew up in a small town in rural Virginia, the kind of place where everyone knew the mailman's name and every strange sound at night made neighbors switch on their porch lights. My father was a cop too, the kind who believed the badge wasn't just fabric, it was a vote of trust. I grew up watching him leave before sunrise, sometimes coming back, with his uniform stained with sweat or dried blood, but always with the same look in his eyes. Steady, heavy, and yet carrying a strange kind of peace. I never really understood how someone could carry that much weight and still find room to smile at the dinner table. I thought I didn't want that life for myself. I thought I was destined for any path that didn't involve sirens and handcuffs. But life has its twisted way of bending you until you break. My brother, Michael, was 2 years younger. Where I was serious, he was fire. Where I hesitated, he jumped head first. He believed the world could be conquered with speed, boldness, and laughter. But that same recklessness that made him the heart of our home also pulled him toward the wrong kind of choices. Nothing too heavy at first. Questionable friends, parties that ended badly, small debts. But before long, it wasn't just teenage rebellion anymore. It was real trouble, the kind you don't walk away from. And on that autumn night when the police knocked on my mother's door, it wasn't my father who answered. It was me. By then, I was already wearing the uniform, already carrying the weight. And it was into my hands that the news fell. Michael had been killed in a mess I could never fully understand. The gun used disappeared from the case file like dust carried off by the wind. Along with it went my only chance to close the wound inside me. Since then, every case I take on isn't just work. It's a search, an obsession. I don't say that to my colleagues, because on paper I'm the straight cop, the one who follows protocol, who writes down every detail, who never raises his voice without reason. But inside me burns a silent fire. Every gun I pull off the streets might be the gun. Every arrest might be the missing link from that night. Every suspect I interrogate might have walked through the same shadows that swallowed my brother whole. And every time I step into a wet alley, every time I catch the smell of fresh gunpowder, my body remembers the night I wasn't there to protect him. My mind tortures me with the what-ifs. What if I had called him more often? What if I had pulled him back before the fall? The badge gave me authority, but it stole the illusion that I could protect the ones I love. Now I protect strangers, put out fires that aren't mine. But in truth, every call, every shift, is just another attempt to quiet the voice that keeps me awake. Michael's voice, laughing, calling my name, then fading into the darkness. That's why, when that backpack hit the ground and that Glock slid to my feet, the whole world froze. It wasn't just a weapon. It was the materialized shadow of a story I never finished telling. Proof that maybe the past hadn't ended at all. Maybe it had just been waiting for the right moment to come back and collect. The radio crackled inside the car as I drove aimlessly, like I so often did when the night felt heavier than my body. The dispatcher's metallic voice carried the kind of call that makes your blood run cold and your instincts flare. Suspicious activity in a neighborhood known as a meeting ground for small gangs, drug deals, and quiet scores that never make it into official statistics. Nothing unusual on the surface, just another alert among the endless stream that pile up in the routine. But there was something in the tone of that voice, a hidden urgency, as if the person on the other end knew this wasn't ordinary, that it carried something larger beneath it. My heartbeat spiked without any logical reason. I couldn't tell if it was instinct or just the addiction of always searching for ghosts. But I knew this call wasn't like the others. I flicked on the low siren, not to scare anyone, just to announce I was coming. The streets, still wet from the rain, reflected the red and blue lights, turning the asphalt into a broken mosaic of mirrors. The cold wind slipped through the cracks of the window, and each block seemed more deserted than the last, as if the whole city had pulled back into itself, leaving only rats and people with nothing left to lose. I breathed deep, adjusted my holster, and remembered what my father always said. Simple calls are the ones hiding the biggest traps. He was right. He was always right. The radio buzzed again. A young woman, about 20, had been seen running scared, clutching a backpack, followed by two men in a black, unmarked car. The anonymous witness said it happened fast, almost invisible, but enough to raise alarms. And in that detail, something inside me shifted. A young woman, a backpack, anonymous pursuers, ingredients that reeked of debt, of secrets, of a crime that didn't start that night. I slammed my foot on the accelerator, not because protocol demanded it, but because my gut was already screaming louder than procedure. In the dashboard reflection, my face looked older than it was, as if every invisible scar had decided to surface all at once. My eyes were fixed, my jaw locked, and one thought pounded. What the hell could be inside that backpack, worth chasing her through the night? The drive to the address felt endless. Every corner revealed nothing but shadows. Every distant siren sounded like an omen. I passed shuttered bars, storefronts behind bars, the eerie sense that everything in the city was sliding into place for a puzzle I'd been trying to solve for years. My hands gripped the wheel until my knuckles ached, the case file of my brother flashing in my mind, the void it had left behind. I couldn't explain it, but some invisible chain was pulling every detail toward the same point. That call, that girl, that backpack. When I finally turned the corner, I saw her silhouette in the distance, running, body bent under the weight. Not just physical, but the kind of desperation that seeps out of your skin. Behind her, the dark headlights of a black sedan moved slowly, predators toying with their prey. I hit the emergency lights, and the car screeched away into another street. But she kept running, as if she was still being hunted, as if she trusted nothing but her own speed. That was the moment the call stopped being just another case. It became personal, even if I didn't yet know why. With every yard I closed in, the scene unfolded like the prologue of something much larger, something that didn't fit inside a report, something carrying the weight of my past. And when I stepped out of the car, my hand already on the holster, my eyes locked on her trembling figure, I knew this night would not end with a simple case closed. No, this night was about to drag me straight into a truth I wasn't ready to face. The tires screeched as I pulled up to the curb, the engine still rumbling like it wanted to warn me I was stepping onto forbidden ground. I killed the siren, and the silence that followed was deafening. The street looked deserted, but something was wrong in the air, like walking into an abandoned house and smelling dust. Before even crossing the threshold, the wind pushed around scraps of wet newspaper, empty cans rolled across the pavement, and the streetlights flickered in uneven intervals, throwing shadows that seemed to move on their own. It felt like the whole city was holding its breath, waiting for what came next. I stepped out slowly, my hand tight on the holster, eyes scanning the scene. The neighborhood was one of those that had seen better days but was now surviving in pieces. Broken windows, walls, scarred with graffiti, the faint echo of a TV playing somewhere in the distance where someone was pretending life was still normal. The smell of gasoline mixed with stale rain rose from the ground, and every step I took felt too loud, announcing my presence to whoever might be out there. That's when I saw her. She was pressed against the wall of a worn brick building, clutching the backpack to her chest like it was part of her body, her breath ragged, her eyes darting in every direction like a cornered animal. For a split second, our eyes met, and I saw something beyond fear, defiance, a spark of rage. Like every beat of her heart was an order not to collapse, no matter the cost. I moved closer, careful, but my instincts never shut down. The alley to the left was slick with dripping water from broken pipes. To the right, a staircase led down into a poorly lit basement, the perfect place for an ambush. My gut told me not to trust the silence. The black car was gone, but I could feel someone was still watching. The dark itself seemed alive, waiting for me to slip. The radio hissed on my shoulder, but I switched it off. No distractions. All I had was my training and my senses. The graffiti tags screamed gang territory, a warning that I had stepped into the wrong side of town. Then a distant crash. The sound of a bottle shattering somewhere behind me sent every muscle in my body on edge. The girl flinched when I took another step. The backpack shifted, heavy, too heavy for books or clothes. The way she held it told me everything. Whatever was inside mattered more than her own life. And in that instant, I realized she wasn't just a victim. She wasn't just running. She was guarding something. I swept the scene again, my stomach tightening. The wet alley, the flickering light, the sound of her frantic breathing, it all dragged me back to the night I lost Michael. It was like the past had set this stage deliberately, daring me to relive it. Only this time, I had a choice in how the story would play out. And before she even spoke a word, before a single shot was fired, I understood. This wasn't just the site of a routine call. This was a stage set for a confrontation that went far beyond the law. That girl, that backpack, that suffocating silence, somehow they were all connected to the void I'd carried since my brother's death. I couldn't explain how, but every fiber of me knew I hadn't been pulled here by accident, and whatever was about to happen, it was going to mark me forever. She looked at me as if measuring the distance between life and death in seconds. Her breathing was shallow, hands trembling as they clutched the backpack to her chest. I took one step forward, and she backed away, too. The silence of the street was broken by a metallic bang, a door slamming somewhere deep in the alley, and the sound snapped my body into high alert. There was no more time for caution. I drew my weapon and barked in a steady voice. "Police! Drop the bag! And show me your hands!" My tone left no room for negotiation, but she didn't obey. Her eyes burned with a strange mix of terror and defiance. That's when I heard tires screeching behind the block. The black car had come back, its lights cut off at the last second, but the sound gave it away. The girl realized it the same moment I did, and suddenly, the scene split in two possibilities. Either I stopped her right there, or she'd be taken by whoever was hunting her. My pulse hammered, cold sweat slid down my neck, and the memory of my brother blurred into the smell of burnt oil drifting in from the street. She tried to bolt down the alley to the left. I lunged forward, grabbed her arm, and yanked her back hard. The backpack slammed to the ground with a dull thud, too heavy for something innocent. She screamed, rough and desperate, and that was when two figures appeared at the mouth of the alley. Masked men, guns drawn. The car had been the bait, and now the hunters stepped in to finish the job. Time slowed. I shoved her against the wall, shielding her with my body, my pistol aimed at the shadows. Their footsteps echoed, every beat like a countdown. She tried to crouch for the backpack, but I pinned her shoulder down. "Don't move!" I growled, eyes locked forward. The first shot cracked, searing past my face and sparking against brick. The flash lit up their masks, the emptiness in their eyes. I fired back, 2 quick rounds that forced them behind a dumpster, the air filled with the thick, stinging smell of gunpowder, a scent that always dragged me back to that night I lost Michael. The girl trembled, but not from weakness. Her eyes never left the backpack lying between us. Her soul was in that bag. I knew then that we couldn't leave it behind. Whatever was inside wasn't just evidence. It was the reason we were all here. I dragged her down behind a cracked concrete pillar, grabbing the bag with my free hand. Its weight told me everything. This wasn't clothes or cash. It was heavier, darker. The masked men fired again, pushing forward with precision. They weren't shooting to scare. They were shooting to kill, which meant the girl wasn't random. She was carrying something worth their lives, and maybe mine. My chest burned with memory and rage. I wouldn't let another life slip through my hands. Not hers, not again. I rolled across the slick ground, pulling her with me, and squeezed off another shot. Not at them, but at the lamp above their heads. Glass shattered, plunging the alley into blackness. Their curses rang out, confused, angry. I grabbed her wrist, the backpack tight against my chest, and whispered through gritted teeth, "If you want to live, you'll have to trust me." And in that suffocating darkness, I knew. This wasn't just another call. This was war, and I was standing right in the middle of it. The darkness wrapped around us like a heavy veil, but my ears had long been trained to read what my eyes couldn't see. Every rushed footstep, every ragged breath, every metallic click from the other side of the alley rang like a confession. We were crouched on the damp ground, pressed behind a cracked pillar, the girl trembling but never taking her eyes off the backpack. Her heartbeat was frantic, but it wasn't fear that struck me. It was obsession. That bag wasn't just cargo to her. It was survival. I yanked it closer, the zipper frayed, corners stained with grease. Too heavy, too stiff. Something metallic rattled inside. I already knew what it might be, but a part of me refused to believe it. While the gunman reloaded, I seized the moment and tore the zipper open. The world stopped. Wrapped in a dirty rag lay a Glock 19 with red tape around the grip and a cracked rear sight. Exactly the way I remembered it from the photos in a case file that never closed. The same weapon that tore my brother out of my life. My breath caught. My hands trembled as if I had grabbed fire with bare skin. For a moment, the shooting, the pursuit, the night itself disappeared. All I could see was that gun. My mind hurled me back to the night of his death, the sight of my mother collapsing, the smell of stale coffee at the precinct, the case files stacked high with the same words, insufficient evidence. And now, here it was, the weapon that was supposed to be gone, erased, buried, back in my hands like a ghost refusing to stay underground. The girl's eyes widened. She saw the recognition in my face, the way the past gutted me in a single blow. "It's not what you think," she whispered, voice trembling but urgent. How could it not be? Every scratch, every mark screamed truth. Then the gunmen's voices cut through the night. "Get the bag!" That's when it hit me. They weren't after her. They were after this. The gun was the real target. She was just the vessel. I shoved her against the wall, my fury boiling. "Where did you get this?" My voice cracked, torn between rage and despair. She hesitated, lips trembling as if the answer would damn us both. "It was given to me by your brother." The ground dropped from under me. My mind tore itself apart. Michael, my brother, dead for years. How could she say that? How dare she? But there was no lie in her eyes, just a haunted certainty that chilled me to the bone. My finger hovered on the trigger. The Glock weighed on me like an anchor made of blood and memory. Logic screamed it was impossible, but my heart, my broken, desperate heart, beat as if my brother himself had just sent me a message from the grave. Bullets tore the night again, shattering glass, spraying brick dust over us, but nothing pierced me more than her words. In that alley, amid smoke and rain, I didn't know if I was fighting flesh and blood enemies or the ghosts that had come back to drag me under. One thing was certain, the gun that killed my brother wasn't buried in the past. It was alive, right here, throbbing inside that backpack, and with it, a secret big enough to shatter everything I thought I knew about his death. The weight of that Glock in my hands was more than physical. It was like holding my own heart ripped from my chest, forced to watch it beat outside my body. I knew every detail. The grip with red tape, the cracked rear sight, the slight wear on the barrel. I had memorized those marks from the crime scene photos, stared at them night after night as if prayer alone could bring justice. And now, with the weapon itself before me, the line between past and present collapsed. The conflict hit me like a gunshot at point-blank range. Part of me wanted to seal the weapon in an evidence bag, call it in, and follow protocol like the badge demanded. But another part, the darker part I hide even from myself, screamed to use it as fuel for vengeance, to track down whoever had pulled that trigger, tear the truth from them, and deliver justice by my own hand, no matter what it cost me, my career, my honor, even my life. And her words, "It was given to me by your brother," still tore at my mind like glass. How do you even begin to process something like that? I saw Michael's body. I stood at his funeral. I carried his coffin. And yet, what if there was more? What if he had been tangled in something larger than I ever knew? What if this gun wasn't just the weapon that ended him, but also the message he left behind? My hands shook, slick with sweat, though the gun was cold. I looked at her, trying to read if she was accomplice, victim, or messenger of a ghost. My instincts, as a cop screamed, it was a setup, that using Michael's name was just bait to break me. But the brother inside me, the older one who spent his childhood protecting him, couldn't dismiss it. What if she was telling the truth? And then the badge itself weighed down on me. Because I wasn't just a grieving brother. I was an officer. I had sworn to protect, to follow procedure, to be stronger than my own demons. But what does the law mean when your heart is begging for answers? What does protecting? Strangers matter if I couldn't protect the only brother I had? Memories came crashing over me. My father's proud face the day I wore the uniform. My mother's broken voice begging me not to let Michael's death fade into another statistic. The echo of a gunshot I never heard but feel in my chest every day. In that moment, I wasn't one man. I was two, the cop and the brother, and they couldn't exist together anymore. Meanwhile, the masked men shifted in the shadows, reloading, preparing their next strike. But the real battle wasn't with them. It was inside me, each second stretching into judgment. And in that invisible courtroom, I didn't know if I wanted absolution or damnation. I wanted justice, but maybe I wanted vengeance just as much. I wanted the truth, but I feared discovering that my brother wasn't who I thought he was. Rain trickled down my face, mixing with sweat, the sky itself pressing down. I tried to breathe, to ground myself, but the only solid thing in that moment was the gun in my hand. The past made flesh. And I understood then. I wasn't just a cop anymore. I was a man split between oath and obsession, and whichever choice I made, whichever part of me I fed, it would carve itself into me forever. The metallic click of their weapons being chambered snapped me back into reality. There was no more time to drown in memories. Her life, my life, and the truth pulsing inside that backpack depended on one choice. The alley was narrow, the gunman had better cover, and the radio on my shoulder was nothing but dead weight. I knew if I called for backup, they wouldn't arrive in time. This fight was mine alone. And that's when the dilemma struck hardest. Follow the book, preserve the evidence, or dive headfirst into chaos to protect the girl and pry from her the truth that could rewrite my brother's story. She stared at me, wide-eyed, waiting for me to be the decision she couldn't make. The Glock lay between us, heavy as a sentence. My fingers brushed its cold metal, and my thoughts spun in circles. Turn it in as evidence or wield it as vengeance. The badge on my chest told me there was only one path, but the blood in my veins screamed otherwise, that Michael deserved more than a report. A flash lit the alley, gunfire tearing sparks from the brick behind me. I had to move. I leaned toward her, my voice low, urgent. "Trust me, or you die here tonight." She nodded, swallowing hard. It wasn't trust, not really. It was survival, but that was enough. My decision came as fast as it was brutal. I grabbed the Glock from the bag and raised it alongside my own service weapon. The double weight was surreal, like holding past and present at once. I knew I shouldn't, An officer never fires an unregistered weapon at a scene, but no rule was going to save us now. I yanked her toward a rusted iron gate, the only way out. The masked men advanced, confident, certain they had us cornered. What they didn't expect was for me to stand my ground. I waited for the exact moment one of them stepped under the fractured glow of a streetlight, then squeezed both triggers. The alley thundered. One figure dropped, another dove behind a dumpster. I kicked the gate hard, the hinges shrieking as it gave way. I shoved her through first, then followed, pulling her down the narrow passage. The city opened ahead of us, but I knew it wouldn't matter. They'd keep chasing, unless I stopped them here, now. And that's when the real moment of decision hit. Keep running with her and the bag, or turn back and finish it. Cross the line from cop to executioner, from law to justice. I glanced at her. Her face was streaked with tears and sweat, but her eyes weren't just afraid. They held something more, knowledge. She knew things she hadn't told me yet, and I realized that if we ran, the answers would slip away forever. So I turned, steadied both guns in my hands, and felt something inside me settle. "No more running," I whispered. "Now we fight." And as my fingers tightened on the triggers again, I knew the choice was already carved into me. From here on, I wasn't acting as a man of the law. I was acting as a brother, as a seeker of truth, justice, or obsession. Maybe by now, they were one and the same. The crack of gunfire still echoed when silence fell heavy over the alley, as if the whole city had held its breath. Smoke from the gunpowder drifted through the damp air, mixing with the stench of rust and rain. One of the masked men lay sprawled on the ground, motionless, his torn mask revealing half a face far too young to carry that much violence. The other had pulled back, wounded, but not gone. I knew he was still out there, crouched in the dark, waiting for the right moment to strike. The girl clung to my arm so tightly, her nails dug through the fabric of my jacket. She didn't speak, just stared at me with wide, unblinking eyes. And in them I saw it, not just fear, but recognition. She knew I'd crossed a line. By drawing that Glock, alongside my service weapon, I wasn't just a cop anymore. I'd stepped into something else. My radio buzzed for an update, dispatch demanding to know what was happening. I could have answered, could have called for reinforcements, but I didn't. If I did, I'd have to explain the gun, the girl, the personal ties now tangled up in the mission, and I couldn't risk this weapon vanishing again into the void of lost evidence. I shut the radio off with a snap. The choice was clear. I was alone in this war, and maybe that was exactly how it needed to be. The consequences came fast. The first was inside me. The adrenaline that had kept me steady was fading, leaving my hands trembling uncontrollably. My pulse thundered in my neck, the rage and grief inside me blurring into one. I had taken a life tonight, maybe two, and the line between duty and vengeance had never felt thinner. The second was in her eyes. She no longer saw me as a figure of authority, someone who could cuff her and turn her over to the system. She saw me as an accomplice. By cutting the radio, by keeping the Glock, I had shown her that tonight wasn't about the law. It was about my obsession, and she realized that truth even before I admitted it to myself. Then came the low growl of an engine. The car, back again. Its lights still off, sliding down the street like a wounded predator unwilling to give up the hunt. I felt the girl's body stiffen beside me, and I knew this wasn't over. It had only shifted. This wasn't just two masked thugs anymore. It was something bigger, something organized, and they weren't going to stop until they had the gun. Distant sirens wailed elsewhere in the city, unrelated to us. No backup, no cavalry, just me, a girl who carried more than she let on, and a gun that could crack open the truth about Michael. I turned to her, my voice low but steady. From here on, there's no right or wrong. There's only survive. She clutched the backpack tighter, nodding without a word. The decision I had made minutes ago, firing that Glock, shutting off the radio, facing them head-on, had already sealed my path. And the most immediate consequence wasn't the blood on the ground or the return of the car. It was the crushing realization that I was no longer just a cop on duty. I had stepped into a hidden war built around my brother's death, and every step I took from now on would erase the line between justice and obsession until it was gone forever. The black car killed its engine a few blocks away, like a predator crouching in the dark, waiting for the right moment to strike. I knew they hadn't given up, and the girl knew it too. You could see it in the way she clutched that backpack, as if it was the last thread holding her life together. The Glock pressed against my side felt heavier than ever, not just a weapon, but a living ghost. The silence between us grew unbearable until I realized there was no more time to stall. I needed answers. I pulled her under a rusted iron staircase leading into an abandoned building. Hidden from the street, I pressed her back against the wall, my grip firm on her shoulders. Not violent, just the grip of a man with no room left for lies. You're going to tell me the truth, all of it. Who gave you this gun? And what the hell did you mean when you said my brother? She swallowed hard, eyes darting away. I could see the war inside her, every secret she held, a loaded chamber pointed at her own head. If I talk, they'll kill me. If I stay quiet, you'll turn me in, and they'll kill me anyway. I leaned closer, my voice low and raw. I'm not standing here as the law right now. I'm standing here as someone who lost everything because of that gun. If you know anything about Michael, if you know anything, you're going to say it. His name broke her. Her eyes trembled, tears welling, and finally she spoke. I didn't lie when I said he gave it to me. Not literally, but yes. Before he died, he was caught up in something that never made the news, never reached your precinct. He was working for someone powerful. That gun wasn't just a weapon, it was a message, a symbol. And your brother knew too much. Her words hit like a sledgehammer. The idea of Michael mixed up with criminal networks had haunted my worst nightmares, but I'd always refused to believe it. He was reckless, yes, but not corrupt. My voice cracked. You're telling me he was with them? She shook her head, tears cutting down her face. No, he was trying to get out, trying to leak what he knew. That Glock, he arranged for it to be passed to me. Through someone he trusted. I was just supposed to deliver it, but they found out. And now, they don't just want the gun, they want to erase everything he tried to expose? The world tilted beneath me. My brother hadn't just been a victim. He had been part of a silent war, crushed by forces too big to fight. My obsession, my endless hunt, suddenly felt less like madness and more like instinct that had always been right. Why you? I demanded, voice rough. Why trust you? She lifted her chin, fragile but unflinching. Because I had nothing left for them to take. They already destroyed my family, but he believed in you. He said even with the weight of the world on your shoulders, you had something he never had. Discipline. My chest caved. I saw Michael's smile, his recklessness, his untamed spirit, and I heard his voice through hers, echoing across the years. He hadn't abandoned me. He had left me a trail. And in that moment, the conversation shifted everything. This wasn't about saving a witness or stopping a crew or closing a file. This was about rewriting my brother's story, dragging the truth back into the light, no matter the cost. I looked at her, at the broken street, at the gun resting against my side. The path was already chosen. The only question left was how far I was willing to go. Her words kept echoing long after the gunfire had faded. The Glock pressed against my ribs wasn't just evidence anymore. It was a tether, binding me to Michael in ways I never imagined. For years, I had lived as a cop obsessed with chasing the shadow of a missing weapon, convinced that if I could just find it, I'd finally bring peace to my brother's memory. But standing there with the truth unraveling, I realized I hadn't been chasing justice at all. I'd been chasing redemption. I spent years believing I failed him. Every arrest, every late-night report, every perp dragged off the street was a way to quiet the guilt. I told myself I was serving the law, but deep down I knew I was serving a ghost. Michael's face followed me through every radio call, every crime scene, every mother crying over her dead son. I wasn't a cop trying to make the streets safer. I was a brother begging for a second chance that would never come. And now, through her confession, I saw the truth. I hadn't failed him. He had been fighting his own war, trying to protect me, our mother, maybe even our father. He carried those secrets not because he didn't trust me, but because he wanted me to survive. That truth tore me open, but it also freed me. The rage that had driven me, that toxic hunger for vengeance, began to shift into something else. It wasn't about blind fury anymore. It was about purpose. Protecting her wasn't just about keeping a witness alive. It was about honoring the last choice Michael ever made. Carrying that Glock wasn't about obsession anymore. It was about finishing what he started. I leaned back against the cracked brick wall, the drizzle seeping into my skin, and let myself breathe. The flicker of a broken streetlight painted the pavement in stuttering flashes, and for the first time in years, I saw the world with clarity. I wasn't just a cop. I wasn't just a grieving brother. I was something in between, a man reforged in fire and loss, now carrying a duty no badge could define. The transformation cut deep. It hurt to admit that I had wasted so many years, letting guilt hollow me out, letting it cost me relationships, sleep, pieces of myself. But in that pain, there was light. I finally had a direction. What once was an endless hunt for a ghost had become a mission. Dismantle the network that crushed my brother, tear the masks off the men hiding in the shadows, and drag their crimes into the daylight, even if it meant staining my hands darker than they already were, even if it meant standing outside the law. I looked at her, shaking, exhausted but alive, and saw more than fear. I saw the last thread of Michael's story, and it was now mine to protect. I gave her a faint smile, the first in years that wasn't forced. He believed in me, I said quietly, and now I believe in you. From here on out, we don't run, we fight. That moment was the breaking point. I was no longer driven by the weight of obsession, but by the strength of purpose. I wasn't chasing vengeance, I was carrying justice. Not the kind written in codes and statutes, but the kind carved into blood and memory. And as the night closed in around us, I knew one thing for certain. This alley wasn't just where a call ended. It was where a broken cop stood up again, no longer bound by ghosts, but forged into the guardian of a truth too heavy to bury. The sirens wailed somewhere else in the city, faint and irrelevant to the battlefield I stood in. I knew no backup was coming. The black car still idled nearby, its engine growling low like a predator deciding whether to lunge again. The girl stood behind me, clutching the backpack, waiting for my lead, and I understood with brutal clarity, this wouldn't end until I made it end. The Glock pressed into my side was no longer just evidence. It was bait. It was the magnet pulling death toward us. And maybe that was the only way to draw them out, to use it, not hide it. I steadied my breathing, let the adrenaline thin just enough to focus, and stepped forward. The street opened up before us, slick with rain, the neon. Reflections fractured on the pavement. They were waiting. The back door of the car swung open, and two men stepped out, guns drawn. A third stayed behind the wheel, his eyes glowing in the darkness. They weren't rushing. They were sure we had nowhere left to go. I raised my hand to the girl. "Stay behind me, no matter what." She obeyed, pressing her back to the wall, the backpack still glued to her chest. Her silence told me everything. She knew this was the point of no return. The men advanced, slowly, masks gleaming in the light. They thought I'd back down, surrender the gun, hand over the girl. Instead, I drew both weapons, my service pistol in one hand, the Glock in the other. For a second, the whole scene froze in a cinematic still frame. Me in the center of the street, her in the shadows, and them, hunters closing in. The first shot cracked from their side, sparks bursting off the asphalt. I fired back instantly. One of them dove behind the car door. The other staggered as a round, tore into his shoulder. The girl screamed, but I pulled her down with me, rolling across the wet pavement. The roar of the engine filled my ears. The driver gunned it, trying to crush us under the tires. I dragged her to the side, just as the bumper skimmed past us. My knees slammed against the ground, pain searing up my leg, but I fired at the front wheel. The tire burst, the car spun out of control and slammed against a light pole. Sparks cascaded as the wires above snapped and showered the whole street in a rain of fire. One of the masked men crawled away from the wreck, weapon trembling in his hand. But when he raised it, his mask slipped, and I saw his face. Barely more than a kid, scared, desperate, not a hardened killer, but a pawn. He dropped the gun and raised his hands, shouting through clenched teeth, "You don't get it! This is bigger than us, bigger than you!" His words sank deeper than any bullet, and I knew they were true. Tonight wasn't the end. It was only the surface, cracking. I turned back to the girl, lifted her to her feet, and whispered, "We survived, but this is just the beginning." Her eyes glistened with fear and something else, hope. The wrecked car smoked behind us, the street littered with masks and shell casings. Officially, this would read like another midnight shootout, but I knew better. The call was over, yes. The scene would be logged, filed, buried in reports. But in truth, this wasn't closure. It was ignition. A war had been declared, and I had chosen my side. I walked us away from the alley, the drizzle washing away footprints and blood, and every step felt like a vow. The truth about Michael wouldn't be buried again, not while I was breathing. Dawn broke over the city, streets still slick from the night's rain, but nothing in that golden light felt clean enough to erase what had happened. I walked alone along the sidewalk, jacket heavy with water, boots dragging through silence. The girl was safe for now, hidden away under my watch. But we both knew there was no such thing as safe when you carried a truth like the one inside that Glock. The official report would be neat, sterile, armed confrontation, suspects down, vehicle seized, case closed. But the real story, the one that mattered, would never touch paper. Inside my jacket, wrapped in cloth, the Glock rested cold and patient, like it was mocking me for ever believing justice could be simple. I could have turned it in, logged it as evidence, washed my hands of it. But the system had buried this gun once before. I wouldn't let it happen again. For the first time in years, I felt I was holding something that could pry open the locked door of the past. And with that came the weight of knowing my life would never be the same. As the sun climbed, glinting off shattered windows and rusted rooftops, I realized just how much I had changed. I wasn't the cop who thought everything could be solved with handcuffs and reports. I wasn't just the grieving brother, haunted and hollowed out by loss. I was something in between, a man forged by fire and blood, now bound to a duty no badge could define. The law was still a part of me, but it now shared space with something more dangerous, the vow of a brother who refused to let the truth stay buried. The lesson hurt. It hurt to admit that years of obsession had cost me people I loved, stolen nights of sleep, stripped me of peace. But within that pain, there was clarity. Justice wasn't about statutes or verdicts. Justice was memory. Justice was refusing to let someone's story die, no matter how many tried to silence it. If carrying Michael's truth meant walking a darker path, so be it. I leaned against a lamppost, watching the city wake, and felt an uneasy calm. Not because the fight was over, it was only beginning, but because I finally had a purpose greater than the ache. The Glock wasn't just a weapon, the girl wasn't just a witness, and I wasn't just a broken man anymore. Together they were raw, the pieces of a puzzle that pointed toward a war I was now ready to fight. I thought of Michael's laugh, of the reckless grin that made him impossible to stay mad at, and I whispered a promise into the morning air. I won't stop, brother. Even if it's the last case I ever take, I'll carry this through to the end. And that's what I leave to you, listening now. Don't wait for justice to fall into your lap. Don't think the truth will come wrapped in a file or stamped with approval. If you believe in something, fight for it until your last breath. Because in the end, what defines us isn't what we manage to save. It's what we refuse to let die inside us. If this story gripped you, if you felt the weight of every choice and every moment, subscribe to the channel and share in the comments which part hit you hardest. Your voice keeps these memories alive and gives me the strength to keep telling the stories many would rather bury.